And just that's
So my name is Ton Hall, and I'm the executive director of the Miles Hall Foundation. And I just want to have you guys, thank you guys all for being here today. I know everyone's so busy, but I think this is a really important conversation that we're having today. And I know we're going to try to mute everybody here, just so I know we've got a few people on here. Right. So I did want to thank Dr. Xavier Amador for being on this call and giving us his very valuable time today. I also want to thank NAMI Contra Costa and Gigi Crowder and her team for also being part of this event today. And I'm excited also that we have the first 25 people who would love to get a book from Dr. Amador is in the chat. So I would go to the chat box and you can go ahead and enter your address. We need your full address so we can mail you a book. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Dr. Xavier Amador. He's an internationally renowned clinical psychologist, author, and leader in his field. His books publish clinical research, worldwide speaking tours, and extensive work in schizophrenia, bipolar, and other disorders have been translated into 30 languages. He is also the CEO of the Henry Amador Center of Anosognosia and family caregiver of two close relatives with serious mental illness. Dr. Amador is a visiting professor of psychology at the State University of New York. And over the course of 2 decades, he was a professor of psychiatry and clinical psychology at Columbia University and the director of psychology at the New York State Psychiatric Institute. His experience has been called upon government, industry, and the broadcast and print media, where he has appeared as a frequent expert by CNN, ABC News, NBC News, the Today Show, Fox Channel, CBS, 60 Minutes, New York Times, Washington Post, list goes on and on. As you can tell, he's sought after. And we are so honored to have him here today. He is also founder of the LEAP Institute, and we'll definitely go ahead and put that information in the chat as well. And so I just, for me, this is personal. We definitely looked at information that Dr. Amador had regarding his LEAP kind of processes, and it was really helpful for us. So I thought it was really important that we hear from him today, as some of us are kind of maneuvering through mental illness or just wanting to learn. So thank you again all for being on the call, and I'm going to turn it over to our renowned guest, Dr. Xavier Amador.
Thank you so much, and I'm going to share my screen real quick. And did I pronounce your name Ton?
Ton, yes.
Ton.
Yes.
My name, by the way, there's no way you'd know this, is pronounced Javier.
Javier, okay, thank you.
Yeah, porque yo soy cubano, for those who speak Spanish. I was born in Cuba.
Okay.
But you would never know by the way I spell my name. So listen, I'm not sick, I don't need help. This is something, I've been in the field, it kind of blows me away. I've been in the field for 40 years, since 1982. I used to be a therapy aide on an inpatient unit, and then I went to college, graduate school, etc. And I've heard so many people say, I'm not sick, I don't need help, who have serious mental illnesses like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, delusional disorder, etc. So my focus in the 25 minutes we have, I'm going to leave some time, I hope, for Q&A, is about how can we help people with mental illness accept treatment. But before we get into that, I think it's useful to talk about what the nature of the problem is. Before we do that, I want to tell you how I got interested in this work in the first place. This is a picture of my brother Henry. The Henry Amador and Anosognosia is named after Henry Amador. That's Henry looking in the window with a big smile on his face, and that's me, the little guy driving the car. And this was taken right after we escaped from Cuba. The Ukrainian crisis is really bringing me back to when we were refugees, landed in the States with nothing. And our father had actually been murdered in the revolution. The point of my bringing that up is that Henry was really like my rock, really listened to me, played with me, taught me how to throw a baseball. We were very close. Fast forward 20 years after this picture, And someone's talking. I don't know if you can mute them, Geraldo. I think it was Geraldo doing that. I was just on another meeting and I was the unmuted one. So my sympathy goes out. So fast forward 20 years in your imagination. And I'm in New York studying psychology. Henry's living with my mom and my stepfather. I had a wonderful stepfather. She remarried. And he was also a widower. And Henry calls me up in New York and says, come home fast, I killed Dad. Now, I didn't for a second think he killed our father, and he in fact didn't. But I got him on the telephone and he had a delusion that while playing the guitar in his bedroom, my dad was out jogging, our stepfather. The music got transmitted into his brain, caused him to trip, fall, and die. Well, he died from a heart attack. He didn't die from anything my brother was doing playing the guitar. So it took about a week, but I got him into the hospital by calling the police, and they were great. This is 1981, and long before we had crisis intervention team trained police officers. But these officers were really sympathetic and great. I met them out front in the front yard and talked to them about my brother and said he needed help. So he goes to a hospital, he gets treated, and I'm thinking he's being given a miracle drug, frankly. I mean, a lot of the antipsychotics have serious side effects, but he wasn't experiencing that. The delusions went away. He was hearing voices, the hallucinations went away. I'm at a family meeting, the end of a 1-month hospital stay, if you can imagine that. Nowadays, it's 72 hours usually. And the doctor says you've got schizophrenia and need to stay on these medications for the rest of your life. Henry said, okay, I understand. I've got schizophrenia. I need to take these meds. We drove home. Mom made us dinner. I'm doing the dishes. I'm throwing something into the trash can. And what do you think I found in the trash bin? This bottle of medication. So I knock on his door, I have a bottle in my hand. I'm brandishing it and said, what's going on? And this started a 7-year period where our relationship looked like this. Henry getting angry with me, 4 hospitalizations a year on average, mostly involuntary. He did not believe he had mental illness. He was certain he didn't need the medications. So he was the first person I ever heard say, I'm not sick, I don't need help. He'd point to me and say, you're the crazy one, not me. Not that I ever called him crazy, but that's how upset he was. And during the 7 years, he was homeless for a while. And during the 7 years, I was trained to become a psychologist. And I learned some skills. And the biggest skill I learned was the power of listening and not telling him what his problem was, not telling him what he needed to do, but instead starting off with asking the person I'm working with, the patients I was working with, what do you think you need? What do you want to accomplish? And there was this one woman on an inpatient ward I did this with, who was really angry at me at first because I was telling her what she needed to do, what her diagnosis was, and it got me nowhere. And then I remembered, wait, stop and implement what your supervisors have been teaching you out here. And I said, let me start over. What do you want? And what do you think the first thing she said was? I want to get out of the hospital. I said, I can help you with that if you're willing to take these medications you don't need. I didn't say to her, medications you don't think you need. I said, her truth. If you take these medications that you're telling me you don't need, I can get you out of the hospital. And it went really well. I ended up seeing her on an outpatient basis. The other thing she wanted was for her mom to stop calling the police and the crisis team on her. I got her mom involved in the therapy and we worked out a plan. So I had an epiphany. I thought, this is what I've been doing with my brother. I've been ignoring what he wants. And I've been sort of, smashing him with, you're sick, you need meds. You're sick, you need meds. So I called him up and I said, Henry, he was in Arizona still living with my mom. And I was in New York. I said, I want to apologize for all the times I told you you were mentally ill. I will never do it again. And I want to apologize for all the times I told you you needed medication. I will never do it again. And I kept that promise. Within 6 months of that conversation and our relationship doing a 180-degree turn, where I respected his point of view. When he talked about his delusions, I didn't tell him this was all in his head. I just listened, I reflected it back. So this is what's happening with the devil, and that must be very scary for you. This was the beginning of the LEAP approach, which I'm going to give you a quick overview of. Within 6 months of those kinds of conversations, and that shift in our relationship, you know, this is what our relationship looked like. That's Henry on the right holding on to me. We're holding on to each other. But not only did our relationship heal and become, you know, what it was when that picture on the left was taken, but he also accepted medication. He accepted a long-acting antipsychotic medication, which he stayed on for the rest of his life, never stopped taking it. And that grew out of our relationship. This is important. He never believed he had schizophrenia, ever. And when I asked him, well, why are you taking these injections, you know, of antipsychotic medication? And he says, well, I do it for you and mom and pops. Mom and pops are this couple that ran the supported living situation he lived in a halfway house. So what was his answer? I take these medications for relationships. This is a story of, we see stories of people with the kind of problem my brother had in the news all the time. This is Margaret Mary Ray. You probably don't know who that is. Many of you know her as David Letterman's stalker. She had the delusion she was married to David Letterman, the celebrity late night talk show host. She was arrested repeatedly, never got treatment. She ended up dying from her illness. She died from suicide. I don't think she committed suicide. That suggests it was a knowing and voluntary decision. I think she died from her disease, just like people die from cancer or heart disease. But she never stopped believing she was married to a man she was not married to. So what's the nature of this problem? Well, the DSM is the authoritative diagnostic manual that all mental health professionals use. This is how we make diagnoses. I was very involved in the earlier revisions of the DSM, and I was asked to contribute text to this one, but it got vetted by the work group involved and then by the American Psychiatric Association afterwards. So what's on page 116 and 123 of your loved one's psychiatrist DSM? The following: unawareness of illness, that statement, I'm not sick, is typically a symptom rather than a coping strategy. It's comparable to the lack of awareness of neurological deficits following brain damage, termed anosognosia. Now, what is anosognosia in neurological patients? I've evaluated patients like this. People who, for example, after damage to the frontal lobe of the brain, are paralyzed on one side of their body and they don't know it. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. You can try to convince them, you can try to show them, you can ask them to move their arm, they don't move their arm, and they get paranoid and scared and say, you've done something to my arm. They don't learn that they have a neurological deficit. Well, that's the nature of the I'm not sick, I don't need help phenomenon we're seeing in schizophrenia. We also see it in schizoaffective disorder and probably in other psychotic disorders. But this is all based on research, what I'm showing you now. But this is word for word what's in the DSM. Unawareness of symptoms may be present throughout the entire course. So like my brother, he was not aware of the diagnosis, but he was also unaware of the symptoms of the illness itself. So this is in our diagnostic manual, and still most of the psychiatrists and psychiatric nurse practitioners and psychologists that you run into still don't know about it, which is why we started the nonprofit Henry Amador Center for Anosognosia 5 years ago, and 22 years ago, we started the LEAP Institute, which is to educate folks like yourself about this serious problem, the symptom that leaves people incapable of understanding they have mental illness. They're not refusing, they're not in denial, they're not being difficult. They have a symptom. Have any of you ever told somebody to stop hallucinating? No. And the reason is because you know that's not under their control. And yet I would tell my brother and many of my patients over the years before I learned to behave differently, you know, stop having anosognosia. Just wake up, you're ill. That doesn't work. This symptom is the most common predictor of who will refuse treatment or drop out of treatment. It's the most common, factor that predicts who will refuse treatment or drop out of treatment, like my brother did when he threw the pills away. It predicts higher relapse rates, more involuntary treatments, poor functioning in terms of going to school, having relationships, good relationships with family, having work, and a poor course of illness. So I want to do a really quick role play. Maybe Geraldo, you can help me to volunteer. I'd like you to have a webcam, be married and working, and then you can raise under, what's it called? I think it's called reactions. If you click on reactions in the bottom of your screen, or maybe just wave if Geraldo can see you. Geraldo, I'm going to ask that you pick somebody. I'm sorry to throw this on you. I didn't warn you ahead of time. Just pick someone at random to volunteer. Remember, you got to be married and working to volunteer, and be willing to come on screen with me. It's not scary. We have a volunteer. This is so, thank you, Phil. So we had 2 volunteers. I'm going to go with Phil since he beat you, Alfonso, by just a moment. Phil, who is it that you believe you're married to?
Shelley Lynn Arnold.
So Sally, can I call her
Shelley.
Shelley?
Shelley, S-H-E-L-L-E-Y.
Sorry, I have a little bit of problem. Shelley Lynn, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And how long is it that you feel you've been married to her?
How long do I feel I've been married to her, or
Yeah.
actually? Be 51 years in June.
Okay. This is really uncomfortable for me. Do you have kids, by the way?
Yes,
How many?
3.
3 kids. This is not the LEAP approach I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes. I was asked to do an intervention by Sally Lynn and her husband, John. They have been really, really upset and frankly scared of you because you keep showing up at their house and claiming to be married to Sally Lynn. You're not married to her. I can prove it to you. I have restraining orders here that I could put in the chat box. The good news is we have a crisis team waiting for you right outside your front door. Would you be willing to go with them and get some help for this delusion that you're married to Sally Lynn? And you
I don't
haven't.
know.
Well,
Tell me more.
what if you went outside and you talked to them and they said, hey, you're not a danger to yourself, right? You're not suicidal. You're not threatening anybody, but we can bring you to the hospital. You are criminally trespassing because there's a restraining order against you. You're in Sally Lynn's house right now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, well, she allowed you and her husband, John, allowed you to be there. And I'm sorry to everybody else to be doing this, but because of the nature of my talk, I was asked to do an intervention. So you can't go back in the house. What do you do?
I go with the authorities.
Okay, so they take you to a judge, mental health diversion court, because you violated a restraining order, you're criminally trespassing. I'm the judge. Mr. Arnold, I'm going to give you a choice. We can indict you, we can go to trial next week on these 2 charges, or we have a mental health diversion court. You can go with a social worker who's in the back of the room, and we can take you to a hospital, and I'll wait for a report from your treating psychiatrist in 30 days. What would you like to do? Go to trial or go to the hospital?
Let's go to the hospital.
So you go to the hospital, psychiatrist wants to admit you to the psychiatric unit, the psychiatrist in the emergency room. What do you do?
I take the admittance.
So you go to the hospital, really? Okay. So they take your vital signs. Later that night, they offer you, a nurse comes up to you with a little cup and says, this is an antipsychotic medication. This other pill is for side effects. Do you take it?
I probably will, yes.
Why? Can I ask you why you would take it?
Well, I'm grateful for you getting me out of the house after 51 years.
Okay. I want you to be serious, all right?
Okay.
And really imagine yourself in this situation. Do you think you'd really take the medication?
No, I know me, yes. And the answer is yes.
Okay. They discharge you after 3 days on the medication. Where do you go?
Go to my son's house.
Okay, your son says, Dad, we're really worried about you. You can stay here one night, but you got to get help. If you don't get help, you can't stay here. What do you do when he takes you out front and gives you a hug, tells you he loves you, and says, go get help?
I respect his wishes and say, come on and take me.
Okay, so he takes you back to the emergency room. Psychiatrist offers you an inpatient psychiatric treatment, do you go upstairs again to the psych ward?
Certainly,
You would.
absolutely.
Do you believe you're married to Shelley Lynn?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So you're going to take medication again?
Yes, I will do that.
Okay. What can I ask you
Not-
why?
It's not terminal. It's not terminal medication.
Okay. So you're let out again after a week this time. Where do you go?
To my other son's house.
Well, he tells you he's not your son and he's got a restraining order. So he calls the police. You end up in front of the judge. You're given the same choice, trial or treatment.
I go to my church.
You can't, sir, I'm the judge. Sir, you can go to your church if you like, but that means we're going to trial. Is that what you like?
Well, with knowing my church and my church family, yes, that's fine.
Okay, so we go to trial. You're found guilty of criminal trespassing, violation of a restraining order, and you're put on probation. Do you try to contact Shelley Lynn through any of this?
I
Give her a
probably,
call.
I probably will. I'll violate the restraining order.
So this goes on for a year. You don't get to see Shelley Lynn. You don't get to see and talk to your two of your three kids. Do you think after a year of this, you'd finally believe you were never married to Shelley Lynn?
It would probably be sooner than that.
You'd stop believing you were married to her?
Yes, I would.
Really? Okay, let me ask you this. Did you propose marriage?
And her father proposed marriage to me.
Okay. Do you remember that day?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So you're telling me that day is just a fantasy. You could be convinced that that was a fantasy, not real.
I'm not convinced it's a fantasy because I remember it vividly.
Okay. So what that tells me, Phil, is you wouldn't stop believing you were married to Shelley.
Probably not.
Yeah. And let's say this went on for 5 years. My question to you is, do you think you'd stop believing? Do you remember the birth of your three kids, each of them?
Yes, I do.
Would you stop believing that happened?
No, I would not.
Okay. That's what it's like to have anosognosia for mental illness. The belief is rock solid. No amount of evidence, no number of hospitalizations, no number of appearances, like Margaret Mary Ray, David Letterman stalker. None of that's going to convince you that you have mental illness. So well, we don't have time for talking about feelings, but I often ask people how they feel going through this role play. And I hear things like some paranoia, like, why is my wife doing this? Some loneliness and feelings of isolation. And that's what I encounter a lot with people who don't understand they have mental illness, who have this symptom of anosognosia. They're some of the loneliest people I've ever met because everyone around them is telling them they're sick. And they know in their heart, just like you're married to Shelley Lynn, they know in their heart they're not ill. Yet everybody's telling them they are. Phil, thank you for volunteering. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And
Enjoy the exercise.
You too, and give Shelley Lynn a big hug when this is over, okay? All right. So what's the LEAP approach? I'm going to just summarize it. I had some examples for you, but the acronym stands for listen reflectively and actively, empathize with special feelings, agree, find areas where you can agree with the person. So Phil and I are not going to agree on whether he's married to Shelley Lynn and has these 3 children, but we could agree on other things like staying out of jail, staying out of the hospital, getting back to work, and we could partner on those things. I would delay the DOA acronym. Sounds unfortunate, but I think our relationships are dead on arrival if we don't practice some of these tools. I would delay giving difficult contrary opinions, and I'll give you an example in a moment. When I give my opinion, I would do it in a humble way using what we call the 3 A's. And I would apologize for things that were hurtful to the person that I did, like calling the police on them. So here's some examples. These are all real examples, by the way. Patient said to me, I don't need a hospital. There's nothing wrong with me. And I'm working with them in the hospital. Here's reflective listening. So you're saying you don't need the hospitalization. There's nothing wrong with you, right? Now there's 3 components. you start with a preface, and then you repeat back in your own words what the person said, and then you check in with them. Am I right? Did I hear you correctly? Do you feel understood? That's what reflective listening is like in the LEAP approach. Here's another one. I know that you're with them and they're trying to kill me. So now I'm part of the delusion. Can you reflect that back? Yeah, why not? If I heard you, I'm with the people who are trying to kill you. Did I get that right? Now, why do this? Because we're trying to create a relationship where the person trusts us and cares about our opinion. Like my brother, he was willing to be in treatment, even though he didn't believe he had an illness, because he trusted me. He knew I didn't judge him. He knew I respected his perspective. I don't want anything from you. I didn't ask to come here. I just want to go. So, if I heard you, you don't want anything from me and you just want to go, correct? I have the right to kill myself. I don't have anything worth living for. Who are you to tell me that I can't? I'm going to reflect that back now. If I heard you, you have the right to commit suicide and you don't have anything to live for. And who am I to tell you that you can't do that? Did I hear that right? Now, am I agreeing with what this person said? I would say I'm not. In the first example, if I was agreeing, I would say, I agree, you don't need hospitalization. There's nothing wrong with you. I'm not saying I agree. I'm reflecting it back so the person feels I'm connecting with them, connecting with their experience, and trying to really understand how they feel. Now I'm going to jump through a few of these because I overestimated what I could do in 30 minutes. Let me give you an overview. You listen by reflecting back without judgment, without reacting, without contradiction. It's active listening. If I heard you correctly, Phil, you're telling me you're married to Shelley Lynn. Did I hear that right? Yeah. I'd empathize. How do you feel about the fact that everybody's telling you you're not married to Shelley Lynn? Now, you might tell me I feel pretty frustrated or angry. I would normalize it. You know what, Phil? If I was in your shoes, I'd feel the same way. I feel frustrated and angry. So you empathize and normalize it by saying, I feel the same way. You find areas of agreement. Stop trying to convince the person that they're ill, because anosognosia is a symptom, like a hallucination. You cannot convince someone they're mentally ill. You can build a relationship with them, though, where they trust you, they feel respected by you, they feel not judged, and they're willing to do some problem solving with you. Partner on some common goals that you can partner on, like staying out of the hospital, finding a job, staying out of the mental health crisis team's custody, things like that. We delay giving hurtful and contrary opinions. I didn't show you that tool, but it's one of the tools. I'm going to give you a resource in a moment so you can see all this at work. We give our opinion with humility and in a way that respects the other person's point of view. So let's say Phil asked me, do you think I'm married to Shelley Lynn? I'd say, Phil, I'm sorry. And I could be wrong. I don't see that you are married to her. I don't see it the same way. I hope we don't have to argue. Those are the three A's. We apologize, we acknowledge that we could be wrong, and we ask the person to not argue. I'd rather not argue with this. I respect your truth. Your truth is you're married to Shelley Lynn. I don't have any desire to talk you out of it. I hope, since you've asked me my opinion, you'll respect mine. I don't see it the same way. And we apologize for things that we do that felt disrespectful or frustrating or disappointing for the person. So those are 7 LEAP tools. These are not steps. I want you to imagine a tool belt, and you've got these 7 tools in there, and you mix and match them with your own communication tools that you already have. But you're augmenting, you're adding to the communication tool belt. So learning LEAP is like learning a new language. You got to practice. You got to really, if you want to learn how to do this, watch some videos I'm going to tell you about in just a moment, and find someone to partner with. If you're having a difficult conversation with a loved one, say to the person you're practicing with, look, this is what my son just said. Would you just feed me those lines? I'm going to practice reflective listening or empathizing or delaying giving my opinion. Or I'm going to practice giving my opinion. When my son asked me, do I believe there's an alien transmitter in his brain? Let's say that's the delusion. So thank you for listening. Let me tell you about the resources. You can go to leapinstitute.org or to the Henry Amador Center, hacenter.org. On both of these websites, we have a number of free videos. So for example, there's a young couple where the wife finds a bottle of medication in the trash can. She goes and talks to her husband. He's using the usual approach. He gets angry, they get into a fight. Then you see the whole scene all over again in this video where she uses the LEAP approach. And this is based on a true story, a true case. And you see where she gets with that into a very different place. You see other videos like when somebody misses a dose of medication, how to talk to them about it. You see another video about how to offer medication using this approach. So I've gone a few minutes over time. I apologize for that. Ton, I don't know if you still want to do Q&As or if we should just close it off with a big thank you.
No, I mean, thank you so much. You know, a lot of what you said just really resonated with me. I mean, I definitely use a lot of your approaches with my son, Miles, and they were really helpful. I think their trust was there.
Yeah.
And it was really helpful. So the listening is super important. But yeah, I would say if you have a couple more minutes, if there's anyone who has like a burning question, I don't know, maybe we'll take 2 questions. Does that sound okay to you, Dr.?
Oh, yeah, sounds great.
Okay. So I can't see anybody. Do you want to?
Maybe we'll have Arado go to the gallery view.
Yeah,
so-
that'd be great. Take us so we can see everybody. Yeah.
John had a question, I think. John Thomas.
Okay.
Yes. Hello, Dr. Amador. Hello, Ton Hall. My brother is currently struggling with alcohol addiction. He's in the detox stage right now, and he's had 5 days without a drink. I left him at my sister's house yesterday, and he spoke of hallucinations yesterday, and he's in very bad sorts. Is this a symptom of anosognosia? Pardon me for my pronunciation, or an early stage possibly?
Does he think he has a problem?
No.
So it could very well be anosognosia. We see this a lot in substance abuse also, in substance dependency, alcohol and drugs, where we see anosognosia also. I would just pay attention to see what happens over the next several months and see if he gains any awareness. If not, you may want to take this approach, which is based in part on an approach that was developed 30 years ago to work with people with substance abuse disorders. Now, in terms of psychosis, is he developing like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder? It's too soon to tell unless you already know that, because part of detox, you can hallucinate. So it's a little soon.
Okay, yeah, I've heard those questions from my primary care doctor. So this was just perfect timing because I just left him yesterday. So it was a pleasure to join you all. So thanks for your help.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the question.
John.
Bye.
And we have Claire. Go ahead and unmute your phone. Thank you, Claire.
Okay, so here's an example of my son, is that as we're conversing, he says, I'm changing the sound of my voice to irritate him. And so I'm trying to use the leap and saying, I'm sorry, my voice doesn't sound right to you, or so what you're telling me is you don't like the sound of my voice, but I don't know how to navigate past that. Other than that, I have to walk out of the room.
Right. Well, I love what you're saying. I would apologize for it. You might want to ask him, is there something different I can do? He gets really angry, gets really aggravated with you. Yeah. I would maybe move away from reflective listening. And remember, these are tools. And just start to empathize with him. Son, you were really angry with me yesterday about changing my voice. I'm really sorry about that. Apologies. So that's empathy and apology, 2 of the lead tools. I'm really sorry about my changing my voice. Now, you're not saying you change your voice, but what you're saying is, I'm really sorry. What you're telling me is, I was changing my voice. That's reflective listening. And sounds like you really got angry about that. I'll do my best not to change my voice. You could also say something like that. Again, you're not telling him you believe you're changing your voice. You're staying with his experience. Would that work or no?
It doesn't. And so I guess I just have to say, I'm sorry, you're hearing my voice differently than I don't mean to be doing this to you. And then I just have to walk away, I guess.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably the way to do it. Do you text each other?
We do a little, but he comes down to stay for a period, or if we talk. Yeah, texting would be great because you don't hear my tone.
You got it.
But when
That's where I
we
was headed.
spend time together,
Yeah.
it's of late, it's that he thinks I'm changing my voice to irritate him.
Right. So I would try texting with him more and using the leap approach in your text messaging.
Well, no, he's here staying with me, and that's the
Oh.
problem is when we talk. So
Well, I text my son and he's downstairs.
maybe I should start doing that and just go in my room and make him go.
I'm
to the other room.
serious. I am absolutely serious about that. How old is your son?
32 in the
So
other
he-
room right
So
now.
he's used to texting.
Yeah.
Hey, son, I was just
If-
thinking about
If
I was
his
thinking about
phone-
the other night. Let me interrupt for a second. Is that okay?
Yeah. Yes.
And ask permission a lot with Leap. I just use Leap with you. Son, I was thinking about last night when you told me I changed my voice. And I'm sorry about that. I hope you can forgive me. Something along those lines, and see if that starts to change his response to you when you talk to him.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have iPhone, then Jerry, then Katie. Go ahead, iPhone, unmute yourself.
Hello.
Oh,
Such a great, oh my goodness, opportunity for my husband and I, Dr. Amador. Our son is 14 years diagnosed, bipolar, probably 1 with psychosis or major depressive disorder with
okay.
agitation and other things. But he thinks he has some tic, like a Tourette rage. He does get into rages at times. And he's difficult to speak with, and he can be verbally abusive. But actually, nobody wants to come help him unless something worse happens to my husband and I. So we have your books. We so recommend them. We're trying to incorporate your ideas. I think they're solid for us and probably pertinent. He is delusional at times, definitely paranoid. So I just wondered if there's any other thing in our circumstances that we can add to our situation. We're very NAMI involved and support group, all of that. We've done it all.
Would he he doesn't want anything to do with medication, right?
He is self-medicating right now on lithium supplement, and he's not, on a supplement of lithium orotate. And he thinks that's helping him. He is afraid of medications, has been on antipsychotics in the past. He has done well, graduate from college, all that, and has had 6 hospitalizations in the past 4 years because he gets easily, off track. It's hard. And
So
you have
to answer your question, sorry to interrupt you.
yes.
If he could be convinced to see a psychiatrist again, if that's at all possible, to let the psychiatrist, HIPAA keeps clinicians from telling you anything, but you have the right under HIPAA to give information. So if you were ever able to help him agree to see a psychiatrist again, you can call the psychiatrist and say, I have information I think that Dr. Smith will find really vitally important. And the information you want to give is, when he's on medication, he does well, but he won't take it when he leaves. Can you put him on a long-acting injectable? So these are where you get an injection once a month or once even every 3 months. And then you can work with your son to keep those appointments. So if you can get him, to agree to see a psychiatrist again, you want to communicate with that psychiatrist, make sure he or she knows the history. My son doesn't understand he's ill. He is not going to take pills. Could you start him on these injections instead?
He was on an injection 2 years ago, and the psych quit him because he wouldn't take another one.
Okay. Well,
we've got a lot of complications, so thank you.
Yeah, he's been difficult at times to stop talking. He starts talking to us and blaming us.
Right. I hear that a lot. The parents get blamed for why the
Everything.
person's not working, why the person's not succeeding, why they don't have a
Right.
family.
Yeah.
You know, parents are lightning rods when their
Okay.
kids get
Thank you.
psychosis. You're welcome. I hope that was helpful. That was,
Thank you.
Yes.
That's real quick.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Dr. Amador. We do want to respect your time, but you see how important this is for individuals to get these answers from you. I'm Gigi Crowder from NAMI, and everyone who wants a book will get a book. We're going to
That's
make
great.
sure of that. We'll purchase more, and you just have to let us know if you can take a couple of more questions. We do have
Sure.
another board member here, Dr. Philip Lowe, who can kind of fill in the gap if
Oh,
you
good.
take off.
Okay. Yeah, I got about another 7 minutes before I got to pick my son up.
That's
So,
wonderful. Okay, so we're
Why don't we
gonna
take a
go
couple
on.
more questions and I'll try not to rush it.
So Tom's gonna have facilitate calling on the next callers.
Thank you. Well, I'm just gonna go. I see Jerry's, looks like she's ready, and the next person in line, and I know she signed on early, so let's take it from Jerry, yeah. And
Go
thank you
ahead,
again,
Jerry.
Dr. Amador, for the extra time.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. Jerry, I think you're muted. You're going to get some help there. Still muted.
Okay, thank you for your patience and
Sure.
thank you very much for meeting with us, Dr. Amador. I have read your book. It's been awesome, very helpful. I just had a question more just to get an opinion. My son he's 27. We found a medication that seems to be working really well.
Great.
And he's getting better. He's, been coming out of his room, exercising, just doing really well. But yet when you ask him, like, I'll say something like, how do you feel compared to like a year ago or 2 months ago? And
Right.
he'll say, I feel the same.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
anosognosia?
Yes. And you're trying to educate him when you ask that question, aren't you? You're trying to get him to gain insight that, don't you see the drugs are helping you, right?
Right.
My advice to you is cut it out. Don't do it. How long has he been ill?
Probably for 7 years at
Have you-
least.
and
that
in the
we
7
know
years,
of.
in the 7 years that he's been ill, have you or your husband ever been able to convince him he's got a mental illness?
Yeah, we haven't really gone that route. Yeah,
Okay. Or that drugs help him? That medication helps him?
we've kind of focused more on like what you said in the book, like not the medication or the diagnosis.
And has he ever thought the medications helped him?
Pardon?
Has he ever thought the medications helped?
No, I don't think.
Yeah.
He'll only
So-
say if it's a negative effect, he'll say then it's the medication,
of
but
course.
not if it's a positive.
So remember Einstein's definition of insanity?
Yes.
That's why I made the joke, cut it out. And for those of you who don't know it, it's doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. So you gain nothing, I think, since you asked my opinion, I'll give it, by asking him, do you see a difference?
Yeah.
You've been trying it for 7 years, it's not going to work. And all it's going to do is create friction. I wouldn't bring it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Great. All right.
Uh-huh.
Well, thank you, Dr. Amador.
You're very welcome.
We really appreciate it. You said you needed to pick up your son, so you
I
definitely
do.
respect your time. And thank you again for the extra time.
You're
And also,
absolutely-
I just want to let people know that you were very generous, and you also, yeah, I just really appreciate you and what you've done and continue to do for others.
Thanks.
And when you leave here, I'm going to tell a little bit more about my story, so people really who are on this call understand a little bit more about
Good.
kind of our struggles.
And let me make a pitch again. Go to the leapinstitute.org website. Look at those free videos. We put a lot of work, time, and money into them, and they're free.
Yeah.
And if this
I've
at
used-
all seem like it's helpful, oh, you've seen some of them?
Yeah, I watched a lot of them. I used
Okay,
to,
great.
in my car ride homes, I used to listen to them.
Oh, good. So were they helpful?
They actually were very helpful, just to kind of
Okay.
have that relationship and like make sure that you didn't lose that relationship with your child. It
Right.
really helped me a lot. And
All right. So you got an endorsement, folks. Here you go. Thank you so much for your involvement, everybody. Special thanks to Phil. It was right. Yeah. for volunteering. Have a good night. And I hope
Thank
you
you
have, I
again.
hope you have a great rest of your meeting.
Okay, thanks again.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
So we have a couple more hands. We're gonna answer those in a minute. I just want to make sure some of you guys who may not know our story and with Miles, what happened to him. I'm not going to get into everything, but I am going to get into anosognosia because that was real. And for like the longest time, you think, well, maybe this is just somebody who's really stubborn, and then you realize, no, this is more than that. And then that's when I took my family to family class. This was something that NAMI recommended, this book. So I used it. Even my mother-in-law read it, my husband, my mom. So it was very helpful. And I think it's the reason it was helpful is because you listen, you empathize, right? You agree, you partner, and somehow the relationship does shift. You know, our story is the most tragic now, right? My son was killed by the police, which is awful. That should have never happened. But I would say learning about how to work with somebody who doesn't understand they're sick is really where this value is. And that's why I wanted to make sure that if people didn't know about it, they know now, because it really is a really effective technique. And it really, I feel like we really bridged a gap with Miles, and the fact that he didn't think we were like his enemy, if that makes any sense. We really were his partner. My husband was really good at it. He was so good the way he kind of talked to him and engaged with him. And so it's, you know, like I said, our story is the most tragic and what happened, but having resources and knowing what they are is so important. So I'm going to go ahead and open it back up to some questions. I don't know, Dr. Lowe, if you're willing to maybe take some of these.
And Taryn, I did see Katie was up next. Katie, are you still with us?
I am.
Okay.
Thanks, Gigi. Oh Lord, I don't even know where to begin, but I guess, you know, the last question really hit the nail on the head for me when they asked about this dismissal of seeing any results from medication, because I've dealt with that as well, and I've wondered, wow, how do I respond to that? I want to convince them, oh, it's so much better. And so to have that clarified was really good for me. And I just want to say too, like, I work as a provider, and it's easier for me a little bit to practice sleep with other people than it is with my own son. And I'm constantly leaving conversations with him and thinking, darn, I missed that opportunity, or I said that wrong, or I should have done this. And I just respond emotionally rather than scientifically. I don't know what to say. So that's it. That's all. The other caller really got my question. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's
important. Can I respond to Katie's comment real quick?
Yes, please, Dr. Lowe.
So Katie, it's completely understandable that you respond differently as a provider to your own son versus, you know, someone outside your family. You know, with your family, you have a family history. You have a relational, in a way we call relational burden. And naturally you respond because, you know, you guys are, have less boundaries. This boundary fluidity is sometimes causing a lot of stress, and also that dysfunctional kind of responses in a way. So don't be shy and leaning into other resources. Like if someone can talk to your son, or, you know, in a way that creates trust, feel free, you know, go ahead and use that. One thing I want to add on top of what Dr. Amador said, which he did not mention, I'm sure that I have dealt with people with severe schizophrenic symptom and doesn't really understand that their thought is so pervasive and also so distorted. But sometimes I use humor. For example, I have a patient one time told me, you know, last night, I'm sure I heard someone said that they're going to chop my head off and in the assisted living facility for $1. How do you respond to that? So I respond with humor. So I went into this person, you know, we have a relationship. We said, really, only $1? You got to be worth more than that. And, you know, that was totally unexpected to that person. And then as a response of humor, and then we laugh. Is that, you know what? Yeah, I got worth more than $1, with who I am not. So we went into a tangent and we diffused the tension. But the most valuable thing that I learned from that is that we build a relationship of trust, and we build a relationship where I could have a degree of influence for that person. But I'm just using that as a talking point. So I hope that, Katie, I want to normalize that feeling that you had. And it's not abnormal for family to be feeling overwhelmed, being almost like blamed for the illness itself, So
Thank you, Dr. Lowe, for jumping in and helping us out with this. It's nice to have your expertise. So it looks like we have Molly next. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. And I think the last two people actually touched on it, because I was feeling like this may not be the most appropriate forum. Unfortunately, I do have a family friend who's gained her trust, my daughter's trust, and it's probably much more effective working with her. But one of my problems I find is I have such anger, and I have such an inability. I believe in this. I've read the book. I mean, I'm not arguing it. But I know I still feel such anger over 25 years of this, dealing with this. And I have a hard time apologizing. I have a hard time being therapeutic. It just doesn't feel real to me. And I think probably, it's been touched on now by the last two people that talked.
So I'm thinking that you might be expecting some kind of, a smart advice from me, perhaps, or some. I'm going to give you a dumb advice, actually. My dumb advice is that I really do want to empathize for your anger, and also that feeling of all the effort you put into, all the love and things that you pour into have produced nothing, in a sense, right? Or even some way you feeling like though you even being blamed for some of the problem, right? So my source of advice first is that you really do need to space yourself from that issue, because you are perhaps not the person that really need to get so deeply involved for the time being. If you can have a buffer using someone else as a stepping stone and getting the person help and whatnot, that might be the better solution for the time being. Because one of the thing we often call in psychology called transferences or countertransferences. It means that someone else's problem have created this kind of a massive anger or what you call unhealthy response within ourselves, right? So one way would be untangle yourself from that first. There is not a better way, because once you become so vested and so involved in that pathology, it in a way has a toxicity and can intoxicate you in a sense. And that's what I'm feeling that you're going through, is that you've been intoxicated, or the toxicity have gotten so bad, it have poisoned you somewhat, that you start feeling angry and you start feeling all these things, right? So the way to do that is to kind of keep some boundaries and detox yourself, and becoming a person that is less involved, and you can see it a little more clearly. And then try to see if you can connect resources and other more helpful resources for that person. So that's how I would answer it. And I hope that makes sense.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. And I deeply empathize with you, and as well family member who've been unfairly blamed for all these issues.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe. Thank you again.
Of course.
Let's go ahead and with Jeannie. Jean?
Hi. Yeah. I have my brother lives in San Diego, and he has something that's diagnosable. I mean, he's never been in a hospital. He's not schizophrenic or bipolar, but it's hoarding. It's a variant of OCD, obsessive compulsive, and he's like 61, and he's had it for like over 20, 30 years or so. And he was diagnosed, I think, like 15 or so years ago. The thing with him is he'll admit, when we mention the clutter problem, like, not throwing away old newspapers and stuff like that, he'll say, yes, I have to, I have to work hard. I do have these old newspapers, blah, blah, blah. But then he'll say things like, I don't have enough time. I just, he feels like he has to take the time to just thoroughly read some newspaper that's, 6 months old or something like that, read it, in detail. And it might take a whole day. I don't know. But he always says, I never have enough time. And then he has these ideas that we think are a little strange or nutty, or unrealistic, right now, I'm short on money, but I have a plan, it has to do with the airport, and it's a bold business plan. And one day I'll have people working for me on this new, to us, it sounds unrealistic, like a pipe dream. But would that all be considered that agnosty, that term that he's got? I mean, I kind of connect the dots.
Okay, so can I ask you, what is your question then, or what is it that you're hoping to address?
Well, it sounds like the Dr. Amador, his advice sounds relevant. It sounds because my brother, he won't admit that he won't admit that his condition is as serious as it is. He'll say things like, oh, I know I need to get rid of my newspapers and my landlord's on me to do it and blah, blah, blah. But, I just never have enough time. And he has practically, he's living off of his savings. He technically is in a position where he doesn't have to work, and he gets by. But I guess it might be the dumb question of the day, but is this particular term apply to him? I'm sure it does. And
absolutely it does. So
Yeah.
my feedback is that usually people who struggle with this issue, piling up things for decades, right? They usually have very low insight.
Yeah.
Now they usually don't act on it unless they're being threatened. Say, now the city's going to condemn your house and you're going to be evicted, and
Eviction.
vice versa, right? So now I want to ask you this: why do you think someone would hoard?
When he was a kid, it didn't seem to be a problem, but when he got a job down in San Diego, he was around 30 or so, he moved down there. And it could be, I read it could have something to do with trauma. We didn't have a close relationship with our dad. Mom raised us by herself. And then I was able to connect with my dad later on, and hear both sides of the story. And he may have a sense that in some ways he felt let down by both mom and dad in different ways.
Yeah, I think, I'm sorry, I have to just kind of inject within a second because of time's sake and other people kind of wanted to have a question. But you just gave an important clue away. Essentially, he has a security problem. He doesn't feel like he has a sense of safety, and also never had this kind of strong attachment to your parent. When someone doesn't feel safe and secure, they need to build a safe and security with external things. And we've seen that in life. For example, some people might be buying expensive jewelry, buying expensive cars, and doing all these things, right? The difference of your brother, he's hoarding these inexpensive little things over time. And I actually work with some hoarding folks who didn't seem to see that they have a problem until that things start piling up. They're losing money, and then rats start growing, and then they have no place to sleep on the bed. That bed is so tiny that because the rest of the bed is filled with junks, right? So usually I would work on the issue of feeling insecure first. For example, if the person can start gradually giving away one thing without really, oh, look, I gave away one thing, and tomorrow I still wake up just fine. And I didn't seem to be, losing my sanity. I didn't seem to lose my health. It has to be very gradual. And then in a sense, the person feel like, okay, I can continue to feel like I can live tomorrow. And then nothing is devastating by giving one thing away. And in fact, we are a little mini hoarder ourselves, right? Look at our garages, and a lot of our garages cannot park a car. We tend to accumulate things, right? So, I mean, that goes to all of us. In a way, we kind of go through that scenario of not feeling safe, afraid that we may lose that one thing we're going to need 10 years later. In fact, something you never touch in 2 years, most likely justify not having it. But anyway, I hope that that give a little snippet. I know that that answer probably incomplete in some way, but essentially, people don't feel secure. They tend to do a lot of strange things that we never expect. And working on that tension might be more fruitful than to say, hey, just get rid of it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I hope that makes sense.
Very, very well said. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's, I'm sure helpful for everybody in the room, Thank you. So let's go ahead and take a question from Patty. And it looks like we have 2 more, so we'll see how we are on time, but
Okay.
so far I think we might be able to take those. Yeah.
Mine should be fairly short. I have a family member who has somatic OCD, and sort of manifested in all kinds of physical delusions about what's going on with her body. And I love the sleep paradigm in terms of maintaining connection with her, right? As opposed to getting the anger or you can't, I had somebody tell me you can't argue with a delusion, or you can't talk somebody out of a delusion. And I have really taken that to heart, but I like this way of talking. But I guess my question comes around, she has a general practitioner who's prescribing medications for ADD, which are really exacerbating the symptoms of, it's allowing her to hyperfocus on the somatic disorders. How do you maintaining connection? I get, but how do you move someone toward getting a psych eval? If they don't believe it's a mental health issue, or they don't believe they're sick, like this is there. Maintaining connection, I think, is important, but there's some bad things happening as a result of a GP kind of believing her delusions, or at least just writing scripts for her. So how would you recommend, kind of moving them in a direction that is more toward psychiatric care versus physical care?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question. That is a very common scenario we sometimes see with people having low insight that, I really don't have a problem. But this is something that you for sure would know, is that they themselves feel the pain. Where is the painful spot, right? So with the painful spot, usually you can lead them to self-evaluate first. Is that, I noticed that the other day you seem to complain about some, ticking issue or some pain. How's that working out for you? And they probably will come back to you and said, it's getting worse. Now, you want to work with their conviction, but not your conviction. You see, that was the first principle. And Lieb actually hinting at that too, is that if you try to have you convince them of your conviction, it never works. But however, you lead them into noting their personal experiences, because personal experience tend to be pretty real and pretty convincing. That, okay, yeah, in this part it hasn't worked. This part really causing me. Okay, so what do you think would be helpful? Is there anything that you feel I can be helpful with? Now, lead them into accepting your partnership rather than trying to convince them, even though ultimately what I believe Dr. Smith is really the person you should see. But giving them the answer never works. But leading them into getting to their own conclusion works much better. So I kind of want to answer in that indirect way. And because I have done it to a lot of patients in the past, and it seemed to work really well too.
Yeah,
So,
and that's very helpful. That's very, very helpful. And it like the other caller or the other person here had said, it's hard, when you're their parent, right? Because they're automatically primed to say, you can't tell me what to do, right? So that, I mean, what, even if your mental health is fine, even that's kind of a natural response to your parent. So it's just hard. It's really, really hard.
Very hard.
To even
Yeah.
if you're doing it right, they're still kind of hearing it through, mom, why you tell me what to do, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's helpful.
exactly.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you, Patty. And thank you, Dr. Lowe.
Of
All right,
course.
so it looks like we have Vina. And I think Vina we'll see how we do on time. Vina and then Claire. And then I think
Hi. Thank you for everything that here. This is regarding my son who's 27, and he has had he was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, and then he's had it for 5 years, but he did not take help for 5 years. With great difficulty, my husband and I got him help 6 months ago. When he was hospitalized, he got on medication. He took it for 6 months with a lot of reluctance, and he has stopped in the last 2 months, and he's now decompensating. My question basically is, for someone who does not have insight and does not accept and clearly says, I never want to take medication, how do we, he's very bright, he has graduated from college, and how do we get him to at least accept medication? And he did very well in those 6 months when he was on medication. He was like a completely different person.
Right. Gotcha. Well, that's a great question. First of all, if I hear it correctly, he's 27-year-old, has schizoaffective disorder, right?
Yes.
And for the audience, some of the audience that didn't know, schizoaffective basically is a combination of schizophrenia, psychotic symptom, plus bipolar disorder, the combination of two, both of which are severe mental disorder by itself. Now, by definition, if he has schizoaffective disorder, in equating to no insight. Okay, so that is a given. So the second thing that you tend to see is this: there will be cyclical symptoms periodically cycling through. Now, the one thing though is that you mentioned he's very bright and graduated from college. So this is where I would go off first, is that you want to highlight and work with his strength. So can I ask you, if you were to name 2 things besides being just the word bright, what is he bright at?
He reads a lot about everything. So we used to call him like the walking encyclopedia when he was younger. So you can talk to him about any topic in the world, about any part of the world, whether it's something, something like coffee, or it could be world politics. He can tell you everything about it, from history, where it started, when it started, and he has a very good memory.
Got it. Okay, so I think his strength both work for him but work against him. So the way that I would look at it is the following: is that you first want to really keenly, constantly acknowledge the fact that he has strength. So when someone is able to be strengthened in that sense, right? Recognizing, oh, look, my mom really is someone that truly appreciates my gift. Now, in addition to that, you might want to start introducing, for example, some helpful book. For example, there are a number of really, really wonderful books, one of which is called Hannah's Child, by a famous theologian. Hannah's Child, I guess, came from the term Bible, where, Hannah, has a child that was dedicated to the temple, that hearing voices, that sort of thing. And what is interesting about that book, it talks about a person's journey, how from handling a family member's schizophrenia to the point that the person one day finally accepting medication help is through relationship and the acknowledgement of each other. And for example, I'm sure that your son is extremely gifted in certain area, comprehending memories and all that. That's what you want to work with. and you want to intellectually challenge him with some helpful resources. For example, if you ever get a chance to read the book Hannah's Child yourself, you'll be delighted. For example, what they do is the following. When someone said, I'm going out today to a church and I'm going to need to take a lightning rod because God is trying to send me a message through the lightning rod. How would you respond to that, right? Now, no, most people were freaked out and get angry in some way. You must be crazy. You're so intellectual. You don't do a thing like this. But the author talks about that, so how about this? I would actually go with you to take the rod to receive God's message. But in the meantime, how about, you got some medication the doctor prescribed you, said we have to do that before we go out. Now, that paints a different picture now, right? Instead of say, hey, you didn't take your medication, you start acting like this and that. The person actually tried to work in partnership with the delusion, but at the same time, trying to highlight someone's strength. So I wanted to answer in a kind of a, in a bird's eye view. And that's usually how you would work with someone, is to leverage the gift, but at the same time, create that kind of partnership. Not that you agree to the delusion, not that you agree to the agnostic feature of, the not knowing, but continue work with the person in terms of, the person still can enjoy life in some way. The fact that the person reads so much and knows it, he got to enjoy that somehow, getting satisfaction out of that, work with that. And that is the more helpful way to getting eventually medication. Hey, Dr. So-and-so had mentioned it. What do you think about this? Would you be willing to do this? And then we can do something else, vice versa. So I know that it's challenging in your son's case being so intellectually bright, but there's always a leverage that you can make inroad to create partnership and trust.
Okay. Leverage their strengths and have them see from their point of view. Because
exactly.
We are just focusing on, look, you were doing so well. Look how you're doing right now. You're isolating. You're not doing all the fun things you were doing. And you're right. We're focusing from our point of view, not from his point of view.
Yeah, sometimes the paradigm is that you really need to turn the table around, put yourself in his shoe, and see what he would like to accomplish or what he would like to do. So that helps to bridge the gap. And once he feel less hostile, feel like, my parents actually do listen to me, and they did seem to see that I have some value, and then work off from that, because that's your leverage.
Okay.
Does that make sense, I hope?
Yeah, yes. Thank you, doctor.
Okay, you're welcome.
Vina, because of the age of your young man and his brilliance at NAMI CC, we really are trying to hone in on getting that age group to come into our programs and get connected to their purpose.
Yeah.
Because Dr. Phil Lowe mentioned something that's really important for him to feel empowered. And so we've hired intentionally a lot of individuals in his age group who are also experiencing feeling like, where do I fit in? And so, the slogan at NAMI, or you're not alone. So he would show up and he would see other individuals. And then there's something I consider healing through helping others. And that's possible for people who have schizoaffective disorder as well, especially young people, right? Yeah. So I would encourage you to not make it about you saying, give NAMI CC a call, but finding a way for him to connect with us, but it being his own thing, not yours, his own thing. There's also definitely a Dr. Lowe and Amador have shared the clinical part of this, but there is a spiritual component as well. And that book is excellent for that. So if anyone has young people, please connect with us, because they're also hurting. I know family members are having a difficult time kind of navigating it, but they need a soft place to land as well. And it usually doesn't happen with the parents. It happens with someone outside of the parent group.
Yeah, we did take the NAMI family to family class. I'm in touch with other families.
Yeah. I'm saying something for him.
Yeah,
So
I know.
families have to have self-care, but the individuals, often I'll take them into our family room and work right there with them. All right, and then pass them over to one of our transitional age youth who's been where they are. It offers hope, and that has to be a part of the equation that's mixed in and stirred in there as well for the young person. And so we're running out of time. Tom is letting me know that. So are these two very brief questions? Claire's on the board right along with Dr. Fields. So we know she can get her question answered. And then me. So we have time for just two quick ones, right, Todd?
Right. Yep. As long as Dr. Lowe is still on board.
Still on board. I think, yeah, I'm running low on fuel.
I bet. Long day. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I have just very quick question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay.
Yes.
So my daughter has 27-year-old, has very severe paranoid symptoms. And she's not hearing voices, she's not seeing things, but clearly she's paranoid about meeting people and thinking being persecuted, accusing parents of doing certain things in the past, clearly non-existent. So my question is, if untreated, she refuses treatment, not seeing any mental health professional. If untreated, does this progress into schizophrenia?
Okay, so let me just tease this out a little bit. You mentioned the word paranoia, but it's not hearing voices or not really seeing images, right?
No.
Now, by definition, that is not psychosis, but that falls into a paranoia kind of disorder. Now, there is no medication. There is no medication that can actually directly address the issue of paranoia. But however, there are medication to address if the person have co-occurrences of anxiety, depression, and things of that sort. Now, with paranoia, the thing that you find most helpful is actually empathy. Believe it or not, it's very odd, is that if the person is paranoid, usually they are feeling unsafe or feeling skeptical about things around them. In other words, paranoid is losing connection with reality, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So again, using the lead principle and also what we already heard from Dr. Amador is that actually the right way to go about addressing issue is not to challenge the paranoia. For example, I gave an example earlier that someone said, tonight my head's going to be chopped off and put on the block for sale for $1. So I asked the person, oh, that's interesting. You had that. First of all, most people would be freaked out with the paranoid, right? So you have to try not to get freaked out first. Try to be okay with the paranoia. And then say, hey, yesterday you told me your head's going to be chopped off, but you're still alive today. Right? So it seemed to be okay. So it's safe. So last night we were watching TV together and we're okay. Continue to give the person a little bit of deflection of things are okay. I know that, but you then need to acknowledge the feeling though. The person, why is feeling paranoia? It could be because maybe at one point she was persecuted at one time by someone. Now that feeling was real, right? I mean, if let's say that someone persecuted you unfairly, you would feel what she felt. So you want to empathize with that feeling, first of all. You don't necessarily have to agree with that delusion, meaning that, you know what? Tonight, I think someone's going to come after you and maybe chop your head off. No, that's agreeing with the delusion. But you can work with the delusion and find a window into that person's mind. Say, is there anything, that must have been really scary for you, that someone is going to be, doing this to you. And I would feel angry too. You want to be relatable. Now that once you establish those things, and then you want to say, is there anything I can be helpful for? Is there anything you want to create an opportunity of invitation? Create an opportunity that the person want to work with you. If that person senses that, my dad really does care, huh? I see that he's taking an interest in what I have to say. Well, I'm going to try this. Is that, Dad, this is what you can do. when I have this, is it okay for me to call you, even it's late at night? Yeah, by all means, call me. I'm here for you. So you want to create that, again, not forcing a solution on the person, but invite a person to join in. And that usually create more effective strategy. And I have dealt with a lot of homelessness in the past in the LA County, and also lonely old folks who are feeling paranoid about, hearing voices and hearing strengthening. That's a strategy we use. Has been proven to be quite effective, I would say, rather than just being slammed the door in front of you, that kind of feeling.
Thank
So
you.
I hope. Also,
Thank you.
okay, hope that answers the question.
Great. All right. Well, thank you all for being on this call tonight. I know we really appreciate, having Dr. Lowe on here and Dr. Xavier Amador. It was really a good conversation, and this is kind of what I wanted to make sure that a lot of people on this call already understand severe mental illness, but some people don't. And I think that's the important part, is sometimes our loved ones may even show signs of this agnosia, right? So it is a great way for us to listen, empathize, and partner with them, right? Agree and partner. So we're going to collect you guys' information. It sounds like most of you put your information in the chat or in the other form. So we will be giving out some books to the generosity of NAMI Contra Costa. And thanks again for partnering, Gigi, with us. And really appreciate the work we're doing together to reduce the stigma, but also learn and educate. And that's what the foundation I've created after my son is really aimed to do, is to educate, partner, to make sure that people understand mental illness, and also for us to remove police from the conversation when they're not needed, and also bridge the gap within the racial disparities that are also shown. So I hope you guys will go to our website at themileshallfoundation.org and see the work we're doing. It is coming up to 3 years for us. Miles was shot and killed on June 2nd, 2019. So it's been a journey, not having him here. But like I said, as we take the journey, it's pain to purpose. And I really wish all of you on the phone who are struggling with your loved ones, that you guys do find solutions. They're there, and it's just education is so important. So I just, my heart goes out to you, because I understand. I've been there, and wishing you all the best. So thank you again. And thank you, a special shout out again to Dr. Lowe for his time jumping onto this conversation. You did a great job. So thank you guys again. Have a good night.
Can I just say one parting word?
Of course.
I do feel that incredible pain and loss as you're losing Miles. I think words are insufficient to describe what your family have been through. And I also want to empathize to family who have suffered a lot of losses, and that's tremendous suffering. But one thing I see was inspiring, though, is that you turn out that sadness and the losses into energy to serving other people. So instead of just hang on, trying to grab the life you have lost, you're giving a part of your life to other people. And I find that very inspiring and very gratifying. And I want to thank you for the community who witnessed your effort in putting this together. And so thank you. And I'm very honored to be part of this chapter in NAMI's life.
Well, thank you, Gal. Thank you. I appreciate those really kind words. It truly is pain to purpose. So we hope you keep on our journey as we continue to make really amazing strides in legislation and in through the county of Contra Costa.
And Todd, how do we end every meeting?
We have to say his name, Miles Hall.
Say his name, so unmute yourself. Keep him.
Miles Hall.
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 Miles Hall. Hard and may he do well.